And in commemoration of the Krugersdorp mass rape a year ago, FullView went back to see how the community has fared in the aftermath and whether there has been the promised changes in the quality of their lives.
In July of 2022, 8 women were raped and robbed by a gang of armed men believed to be illegal miners while shooting a video at an abandoned mine dump in West Village in Krugersdorp.
The West Village area is known as an illegal mining hotspot and has been plagued by crime for years, and this shocking incident triggered a massive public uproar, and so police descend on the area in a series of raids over several days.
And they rounded up more than 120 people in total, all initially charged with various unrelated crimes, mainly related to illegal immigration.
But 14 were later charged with the rapes as well.
However, the National Prosecuting Authority withdrew those charges after DNA testing failed to link them to the crime, and no one else has yet been charged.
Now, our attempts to get comment from the police were unsuccessful.
We're still not free in West Village. There was a bit of change just I think 3 months after the imbizo that had happened. We could see police visibility, but there was no consistency, and this is something that we had stressed out and asked that please give us consistency, because then the place is a mine dump which will attract illegal miners, and that comes with these gang-related issues. So as long as there's no consistency in the police visibility and the problem with the illegal mining within South Africa dealt with, then there is no freedom.
And more on the special report at 6 o'clock on FullView.
And to this now, the issue of disused mine shafts that are left open is an ongoing concern in the country. The Centre for Environmental Rights says the process was poorly managed and resulted in severe problems for the country. There's definitely a need for the country to address this crisis. Let's explore some possible solutions now. And we are joined by Centre for Environmental Rights Mining Program Attorney Tarisai Mugunyani. Thank you so much for your time, Tarisai, this afternoon. Last year, Mineral Resources and Energy Minister Kweremantashe said his department has an allocation of around 140 million rand a year to close open holes which are being exploited by illegal miners, and he says that it might take around possibly 17 years to complete the process at the rate that things are going. And this, of course, is a revelation that we all heard in Parliament. But is this a budget issue, or are there some easy wins that the department should be looking into here?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. I think we currently sit with a problem of having around 6,100 ownerless and derelict mines that are unrehabilitated. This obviously poses the challenges for a lot of communities in that they are exposed to these holes, and obviously due to social circumstances, you find that there is illegal mining or artisanal mining that is happening in those areas. I think this problem goes beyond a budget. We know that the South African law is very clear, in particular the mineral resources and energy policies and legislation is very clear in that mining companies are supposed to rehabilitate in the process of mining. Historically, though, the law enabled that rehabilitation should happen at the closure of mining, but we know that there have been legislative advancement in stating that during the process of mining, rehabilitation should occur, and finally a closure. So there's definitely an obligation on the mining companies to rehabilitate these holes, these sinkholes, and these abandoned mines that have been left unrehabilitated. And
I wonder then on what you're saying, because it does appear that, you know, as everybody we speak to on this particular subject talks about how, you know, there's multiple players here that should be held accountable. But in your view, who should be shouldering the blame for what we are seeing when it comes to these disused mines?
Definitely the mining companies. I think there's an obligation on government to ensure that there's adequate mine closure that happens post-mining. Mining companies set aside what we call financial provisioning for the purposes of rehabilitation. So that is at the onset of applying for a mining right. Mining companies assess the amount that will be required to rehabilitate once they finish mining. That money is then put aside in the form of cash a bank guarantee or as a trust for the purposes of rehabilitation. The question then becomes, if this money was collected and if, the department went through the adequate process of issuing these licenses and ensuring that financial provisioning was collected, if the funds are available, then those funds need to be recalled for the processes of rehabilitation. In instances where such mining companies have either deregistered their companies, then it's unfortunate then that responsibility is shouldered on the state. And in rehabilitating, should the state use its own state funds to rehabilitate, they have the opportunity through the Mineral Resources Act to actually then look for those mining companies and request that those funds be refunded to them, because they would have done the job that the companies should have done at the onset, at the closure of mining. The question, I think, then comes, why is adequate mine closure not happening? And obviously then this calls to the question of whether the department is capacitated enough to ensure that they are ensuring that these mining companies are in compliance with the mining rights that they've been granted.
Now, one of the things that, we often leave behind when we talk about the issue of these disused mines, of course, there's a whole lot of accountability that needs to be spoken about here, is that this is not only about costs that are involved here, but there are serious repercussions for the country's soil, water and air, and this could have a serious impact on citizens as well.
Indeed, that is correct. I think we are only looking now at post-land use at the closure of mining, right? To kind of cater to how do communities sustain themselves and benefit at mine closure? What economic sources can be developed around the closure process of mines? What economic benefits or economic projects can be put in place once these mining companies have closed the process of mining? We know that in law that when these companies mine, they are supposed to have a social and labor plan, which is supposed to benefit communities from a social and economic perspective. The question becomes, at mine closure, if we are to consider post-land use, what benefits can be put in place for mining communities to actually then ensure that communities, one, are not suffering economically, are not suffering socially, but that we are preserving our environment, our water sources, and the soil to ensure that communities do not suffer from the impacts of mining.
Yeah, and it sounds like the closure certification process then is not working as well as it should be, particularly when one thinks about mines like Aurora mine, for example.
Definitely. I mean, the question comes, if the state is noting that these mining companies have left these mines unrehabilitated and there are no closure certificates issued, how do we then capacitate the State Department to ensure that there's adequate compliance, there's adequate follow-through to ensure that, closure is happening as it should, and that compliance certificates for closure are being issued as they should?
Tarisai, it looks like there's a lot that needs to be done here when it comes to this particular issue. And as you say, there are some easy wins that could be looked at and really be dealt with and applied as an immediate measure in order to be able to alleviate some of the pressures here. That was Center for Environmental Rights Mining Program attorney Tarisai Mugunyani, who is, of course, giving us their sense and what exactly is going on here.